Hello and welcome, friends, to another Let's Talk UNRWA episode. I am Mara Cronenfeld, the Executive Director of UNRWA USA, and your host for this hour. And today, of course, is Nakba Day. Nakba, meaning catastrophe in Arabic, marks the original dispossession and expulsion of Palestinians from their homeland 75 years ago. Nakba also describes the experience of refugees still living under occupation and blockade through war and displacement, unable to exercise their basic rights and return to their ancestral homes. A quick refresher on our program, Let's Talk UNRWA. It's a monthly speakers series live streamed on UNRWA USA's social media channels. Our goal is to provide all of you with an insider view of UNRWA's work. It's also a unique opportunity for you to hear directly from UNRWA staff, and that's, of course, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees, who work in the field and also here in the United States. In honor of Nakba Day, today, we are honoring Palestine refugees by remembering their original dispossession and expulsion from their homeland. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, was established in 1949 as a response to the Nakba, and it provides education, health, relief, and social services to over 5 million registered refugees. To commemorate this day, we are honored to speak to you about about a project to digitize UNRWA's archives that have documented Palestine refugee journeys since the Nakba. This is an important and huge project undertaken by UNRWA to preserve the stories and records of Palestine refugees. Dr. Valeria Cetorelli, Sara, Abou, Khalil, and Alaa are our guests for this episode. Dr. Cetorelli is head of refugee registration and eligibility based in UNRWA's Beirut, Lebanon office. Sara and Alaa are Palestine refugees themselves, working directly with the archives under Dr. Cetorelli's leadership. Thank you, Valeria, Sara, and Alaa, for your time, for being with us today, and thank you for your service to UNRWA on this extremely important project. Really lovely to see all of you here today. And I just should say that we will do the best we can with the internet. As I mentioned, our guests are sitting in Beirut, and as many know, due to the difficult situation, the devaluation of the Lebanese currency and ongoing challenges locally, the internet may sometimes cuts off, but we're hoping for the best. So thank you all. Well, great. I'll start with a question that we generally start with, which involves reminding all of our listeners that the majority of UNRWA's some 28,000 staff members are refugee themselves, just like Sara and Alaa. I would love, on that note, for Sara and Alaa to tell our viewers about yourself and your families, and about your family's Nakba story. Where are you from in historic Palestine? And how has UNRWA played a part in your own lives? And we'll start with either one of you, whoever would like to start. Oh, Sara, let's see if we can hear you. It looks like.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Great. Hi, Mara. Hi, everyone. Mara, thank you for interviewing us today on such an important day. I believe all Palestinians worldwide today share the same memories and they carry the same emotions. The Nakba story started back in 1948, where my grandparents and thousands of other Palestinians were forced to leave their homeland. We originally come from Acre subdistrict, North Palestine. My grandmother comes from Sha'ab village, and my grandfather comes from Sakhnin village. And they were both residing in Acre before 1948 conflict, but had to flee to Vintage Bed village, South Lebanon. And from that time until now, 75 years later, we're still refugees living in Lebanon. As for UNRWA, I believe UNRWA has been playing a crucial role in supporting Palestine refugees and in supporting our community ever since it started operating back in 1950. Personally, UNRWA has been always part of my life, as my dad worked with UNRWA for 37 years. So ever since I was a child, like from the day I was born until my dad's retirement, I've been always hearing so many stories about UNRWA, about his work, about the positive impact that UNRWA has on our community. And that's where my appreciation towards UNRWA comes from.
Thank you, Sara. And what role did there's some feedback, maybe Sara, well, I'll just ask the question and then yeah, I think it's gone away. Sara, what did your father do at UNRWA? What kind of work did he do there before he retired?
He was a human resources manager before his retirement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for telling your story. And let's move to Alaa. Tell us about where your families came from in historic Palestine, your family's experiences of the Nakba, and what your relationship to UNRWA is as well.
Hello, Mara. I want to join my colleague in thanking you for interviewing us today. My grandfather was originally from a village called Shafa Amr, and my grandmother is originally from a village called Al Bassa. They both had, along with their families, to leave their countries, to leave their villages and flee to South Lebanon to a Rashidiyya camp, where they eventually met and they fell in love there. They got married and had 8 children. Since 1950s, UNRWA was providing essential services for my grandparents and for all the Palestine refugees in all 5 fields. These services paved the way for my father's education, which assisted him in securing a job and providing for his family. Uh, I myself received an education at an UNRWA school, and right now I'm a fourth generation Palestine refugee. Looking back at how UNRWA services impacted our lives and how essential these services are, like they are playing an integral part of our journey as Palestine refugees in Lebanon. Um, I think that's my relationship to UNRWA. I feel like grateful for this services that UNRWA is offering us.
Thank you, Alaa. And I actually had the chance to visit Rashidiyya camp when I was in Lebanon about a month and a half ago. And were you born in the camp yourself?
No, I was born outside the camp, but it's still my favorite camp in Lebanon.
Mhm. It's right by the sea, and we also understand when we were there that the sea is actually encroaching on the camp, and so I know there and has actually destroyed some of the shelters there. So I know the camp and UNRWA are working with the Lebanese government to try to set up a seawall to protect the shelters.
Yep.
Very good. Well, lovely to see you. I got to see you in Lebanon, and lovely to see you both again. So thank you for your telling your family stories. Valeria, can you describe the UNRWA project for our audience and what these historical archives contain, where the original documentation, which I understand was in paper form, where it's stored currently, and what the state of that documentation is?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Mara. As you mentioned in your introduction, UNRWA was established by the United Nations General Assembly in December 1949 and began operations in May 1950. It was handed over the workload of the Red Cross and the American Friends Service Committee that in the preceding 2 years had provided humanitarian assistance to those affected by the 1948 conflict in Palestine, known as Al-Nakba, the catastrophe in Arabic. Between 1950 and 1951, UNRWA conducted a census and registered those who were deemed to meet its operational definition of Palestine refugees, having lost both home and means of livelihood as a result of the conflict. And since then, UNRWA has maintained and updated family files of registered Palestine refugees to determine their refugee status and service eligibility. The files now span up to 5 generations, and they contain documents attesting family composition and place of origin in Palestine before 1948, the circumstances surrounding their displacement, and subsequent life events such as births, marriages, migrations, and deaths from the Nakba until today. Over the years, UNRWA has regularly modernized its registration procedures, including moving from physical to digital records. The historical documents of the family files remain in the locations where they were originally archived, in UNRWA 5 field offices, in Beirut, Damascus, Amman, East Jerusalem, and Gaza City. Whereas the records of currently registered refugees are stored in our web-based refugee registration information system. With this project, we aim at completing the digitization of all historical documents in the family files and retracing family trees through these documents, so as to link all currently registered refugees in the refugee registration information system back to their ancestors who were displaced from Palestine in 1948. By establishing this digital archive, we want to make it possible for those refugees who are interested to view their own family tree and access digitized documents pertaining to their family history. We also envision that the digital archive will have an interface displaying aggregate information from these files for researchers and the wider public, including places of origin, numbers, and life trajectories of those who were displaced in 1948 and their descendants, for whom a just and durable solution is still outstanding.
Wow. So let me make sure that I understand, and also for those tuning in right now. So there are the actual physical documentation that's kept in the 5 field offices where UNRWA field sites where UNRWA operates, and that of course is, as you mentioned, that is Gaza, that is the West Bank and East Jerusalem, Jordan, and Lebanon and Syria. And then right now there is an online registration system that you use for ongoing activities with UNRWA. And it sounds like you are digitizing those historical records and connecting them to the current computerized online information. Is that correct, Valeria?
That's correct, exactly. And we will have an interface through which we will make it possible for refugees to access their own family tree and their own historical documents. And then we will display aggregate information for the wider public, obviously preserving the privacy of refugees. So it would be just aggregate information from the files that
wow.
will be.
So, and a couple more questions, if you don't mind. My understanding is that some of the original paper documentation, some of it was actually destroyed at different times in the last 75 years. Is that correct? In certain settings?
No, the documents were not destroyed. Actually, they have been kept for more than 70 years in UNRWA offices. So they are still there, but unfortunately, most of them, a large part of them have not yet been digitized or classified in a systematic way. And so they are not linked with the current web-based refugee registration information system.
Okay, so that's very good news. I had understood incorrectly that some of the actual physical documents were destroyed in various conflict settings, but they're all there.
They're all there.
Excellent news. Okay, and then you had said family trees. So what I'm understanding then is a refugee, a registered UNRWA refugee can get in contact with you in the future and be able to access the system and actually see their family tree, all the information that was collected both at the time of the Nakba, and then over the last, like you said, 70 plus years. And they could, and you actually, the system builds the family tree for the refugee. Is that correct?
Yes, we have a complex process, quite a rigorous process that we have developed. Actually, since last year, we have been able to use small project funding to design and pilot a rigorous process to scan and classify documents, identify all family members across generations, and retrace family trees. The pilot team consists of 25 young Palestine refugees living in Lebanon. We have scanning clerks who are responsible for scanning documents at a high resolution and systematically classify them following established technical instructions. Then we have registration assistants who retrace family trees based on a careful review of these documents. Registration assistants work under the supervision of registration officers who are responsible for verifying and approving the reconstructed family trees. Then we also have data analysts who aggregate information from the digitized files to produce statistical reports and dashboards, and quality assurance specialists who oversee the entire process to ensure alignment with the technical instruction. The pilot team is guided by two senior staff, also Palestine refugees themselves, who have worked in UNRWA registration divisions since the 1980s and are therefore very familiar with the various documents and procedures that UNRWA has used over the years to register Palestine refugees. So far, the pilot has focused on 15 villages in northern Palestine that were depopulated in 1948 and whose inhabitants fled nearly all to Lebanon. So over 50,000 Palestine refugees originating from those villages have been traced back to their 1948 ancestors through their digitized family files. Now, based on the experience of the pilot, we are fundraising to scale up the project. And in the coming months, the team will continue working on digitizing historical documents and retracing family trees village by village, and later move to towns and cities according to the resource envelopes available. It is also important to mention that while we are working on this project, our regular registration operations continue without interruption. So there are currently 5.9 million registered Palestine refugees, and every year we register on average 100,000 new descendants. And just a few months ago, we launched an UNRWA mobile platform to further facilitate registration for all Palestine refugees within our 5 fields of operations and beyond.
Okay, and so what would you say is the percentage of historical records that have been digitized to date?
Well, they have about 1/3 of the documents were scanned in the past. 2/3 of the documents were scanned in the past. 1/3 is not yet scanned, but the scanned documents were not systematically classified yet. And we are talking about a total of 30 million historical documents.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that gives a good sense of the scope, and we'll come more to the fundraising aspect of this and the kind of future vision for this project, how long it will take. I'll just take a moment before I turn to our colleagues Sara and Alaa to say that we have somebody, Jose, tuning in from Angola. We always get people from all over the world, so I just wanted to recognize, and we have our friend Khalil Hamid, who is often just a loyal audience member and really he says thank you for all the information and for sharing. And Khalid, I see you have a question which we'll which is, when can a Palestine refugee access their family tree and digital record? And we'll come back to that after Alaa and Sara have a chance to talk. We have that question already in mind. But can I ask anybody else tuning in right now just to say where you're tuning in from? It warms our hearts when we see your name and where you're coming in from, whether in the US or in the region, or as it happens in Africa. So we have Nadal Abuta saying thank you for all you do. So we'll continue to share some of the comments. And we have Sara from Washington, D.C. Oh, there's Laura, our friend, who is also a longtime supporter and somebody who often tunes in. Thank you, Laura, from New Mexico. Wonderful to see you here. So, okay, let me turn to my colleagues Sara and Alaa and say, just that I mentioned I had a chance to go visit Lebanon about a month and a half ago, and got to have the opportunity to visit Burj Baranje camp and Rashidiyya, as I mentioned, and also the Sableen Training Center outside of Saida, and then visit the archive project myself. But I can say that it was a profound trip. I mean, it always is to the region for so many reasons, visiting the camps and just, the difficulties refugees are facing in all of the settings, yet of course persevering in spite of. But I think Lebanon was particularly difficult to see, both because of the devaluation of the currency, the fact that refugees are living on so little. My understanding is that the Palestine refugees in Lebanon are living on an average of $2.50 a day. And that, for example, somebody would have to work 60 hours a week and a half to even afford meat for their family, let alone food. There are children going to school hungry. And then, Lebanese, those Palestinian refugees in Lebanon have very limited access to the health system, to any kind of Lebanese public works. And so this population of some 200,000 is facing very extremely difficult settings. And it's not something that we're as aware of in the United States. So I just wanted to make that clear while I have this opportunity. And so really saying that Alaa and Sara, I understand the hardships that Palestine refugees face in Lebanon. Can you both tell us about your role in this project and what it means to you as Palestine refugees in Lebanon, working on this project and helping to preserve these archives through the digitization project? And maybe I'll start with Alaa this time, if you're ready.
As a registration assistant, my role in this project is receiving scanned documents or digitized documents for a particular family. I then start deciphering these documents for all the important information mentioned in these documents and provide some recommendations. These recommendations are later checked by my supervisor, the registration officer. This process is essential because we're trying to ensure the maximum accuracy of every family tree that we are tracing. Working in this project is such a unique experience because it's somewhat of a departure from our typical services at an agency. So normally as UNRWA, we focus on the present and future needs of a Palestine refugee, for example, cash assistance and food assistance for the present needs and health and education for future needs. This project is delving into the past and offering us, the Palestine refugees community, an opportunity to initiate dialogue about past events and helping us and empowering us to reclaim or re-own our history.
Wow. And I think it's also important to mention before I turn to Sara that, there are only actually, what I understand is some 39 occupations that are available to Palestine refugees in Lebanon. And so most refugees are day laborers working in the informal sector. And again, not making enough to really provide for a family. And so this project actually employs, Valeria, you said how many refugees?
Currently 25 young Palestine refugees. Yeah.
Great, great. So Sara, let me turn to you and hear about this project and what it means to you as a Palestine refugee yourself.
Yeah. I work as a quality assurance specialist, and like Alaa, I also feel like that we're working on a one-of-a-kind project that matters to each Palestinian. Like the documents that we are digitizing and working on carry all the memories that we had to leave behind, all events about every family member, and all of even the stories that we used to hear from our grandparents. So, personally, for me and for every team member here, um, we feel that working on such historic files is very emotional, yet very motivating, as we feel that in the end, we're going to be able to give our community their own reconstructed family trees, their own history, and even a link to their roots.
Actually, on that note, then, Sara, let me ask you about some powerful moments you yourself have witnessed working on this project. I got to hear some of these moments myself when I visited the archive project. I'm sure our viewers would like to hear. And also, just as you're describing, have you been present when families have, accessed their family trees, and what has that been like?
Yeah. Actually, the first thing we were asked to do here when we started working here is to check our own family files, and that's what I did. On one side, I was very excited because the feeling of working on such historic files felt to me like being in history. At the other side, I was also very curious because I know that many things happened in the past. And usually, my dad always mentions that my grandma suffered throughout her life. And every time to ask him why, he used like not to talk about it. So I wanted to know more about what happened through the documents. However, I never really imagined that I'd be discovering things that even my dad didn't know about. Um, so I started checking my family files and I saw a document that was really shocking, where I read that my grandma was married to her cousin before getting married to my grandfather, which is something that I never knew before. And then I read more like I was checking more documents, and I read another one that mentions that the two had a daughter named Mariam. So I had an aunt that I never knew about, and I just knew about her from reading this document. Then I found out through more documents that Mariam died at a young age. However, I was able to add her back to the UNRWA's registration system and to tell my dad about her. Another document that I read was dated 1977, and it says cancel Lutuf, Muhammad, and Ahmad on death. And these were my grandfather and my two uncles, and they were living in Tel Zatar camp. The three of them were victims of Tel Zatar massacre, which happened during the Lebanese Civil War. Discovering all of these facts and seeing all these documents helped me actually understand why my dad used to remain silent the whole time. Honestly, I was never able to see my family the same again. Like, I've been always very inspired by the resilience. And the moment, like, personally for us, seeing our own family tree was very emotional. As for us, and I think many people hearing me now can relate, like, we all wish to have this one family photo that has all of the family members. However, unfortunately, some of the members would still be missing. So, for us, seeing the family tree, having all these family members linked together finally in one place, is like a family photo for us. And this was our gift from the project.
Wow. Wow, that's so meaningful. were you able to share this information with your father, or have you not been able to yet because of how painful it is for him?
Actually, some of the stuff that I have learned, like my Aunt Mariam, he didn't know about it, so I definitely told him, and he was also very surprised. But like the events of my grandfather and his two brothers, he definitely knew about. It was me reading it for the first time, written like by UNRWA to declare their death, was really emotional. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Sara, and I know how difficult this is, so I appreciate it even more. This just shows the power of these records. Let me turn to Alaa for your experience.
Personally, I was fortunate enough to share some of the documents, the historic documents of our family with my uncle who came to visit us from abroad. As I started showing him the documents, he started telling me stories about our family in a level of details that he wouldn't have get to, or he wouldn't have remembered if it wasn't for the documents. This was incredibly touching because it felt like changing this myth or untouchable memory or story that I hear into physical evidence or physical. It made it more real for me, and I was fortunate enough to go to the physical archives and hold the paper written in the handwriting of my late grandfather. May his soul rest in peace. In another situation, to answer your second question, I was present when we offered the family tree to a refugee, and he found out because of the family tree that he has an uncle and first cousins that he didn't know about because his father and his uncle were separated because of the Nakba, and we were able to put them in touch. And you can imagine how emotional it got after meeting, like after 75 years, you find out that you have relatives, like first cousins and an uncle that you never met. This made me like learn about a new aspect or a new the importance of our project is not just preserving the documents, it's not just preserving history, it's also reconnecting some families together, because there's no shortage of this cases when during the Nakba a lot of people got separated and a lot of people lost contact.
Thank you for sharing that. And how closely were the two family members living? Were they living close to each other and didn't know that they were related?
Someone was living in a certain country and the other person in another country, so they had to meet online.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. I'm sure, like you said, there are many more stories, many more connections that the digitization project will reveal. Thank you for that, Alaa. And just we're hearing from Lean, who's a colleague of ours. She says, this is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing these stories. And others also thanking us for holding this event. Thank you all, our viewers, for tuning in and hearing from our UNRWA colleagues. And let me turn back to Valeria. As we're all aware that the UNRWA, the United Nations agency, was of course created as a response to the Nakba. And since its creation until this day, 75 years later, unfortunately, there hasn't been a just and durable solution to the plight of Palestine refugees. And we hope for that day. We hope for the day that UNRWA will not need to exist. We hope for a just and durable solution. Valeria, how does this project align with UNRWA's overall mandate? Help connect this project to the mandate of UNRWA.
Yes, thank you, Mara. Yes, as you said, UNRWA was created as a response to the Nakba and is mandated to provide assistance and protection to Palestine refugees pending a just and durable solution to their plight. The family files that we're working on constitute the backbone of UNRWA's operations. They are the main source to of evidence, the main source of evidence about those who were displaced in 1948 and their descendants. As such, they serve to ascertain Palestine refugee status as per UNRWA definition, and to identify the eligible population for UNRWA services, such as health, education, and relief across Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. Now, besides their operational use, the preservation of these files, including family trees, is an integral part of the protection of Palestine refugee rights under international law. And their accessibility through a digital archive may allow for a better understanding of the Nakba and its consequences until today, based on individual and family experiences. So ultimately, we hope that raising awareness about the Palestine refugee history as evidence in these files may also contribute to a constructive engagement toward a just and durable solution.
Thank you for that, Valeria. We're going to talk now a little bit about some of the challenges that the project has faced, and also kind of what you see as the way forward in terms of the vast work that needs to be done, and what are the resources needed to continue this project and ultimately complete it.
Yes, so efforts to digitize the historical documents of the family files actually began in the early 2000s. Out of, as I said, a total of about 30 million historical documents, 20 million were scanned at that time, but funding was insufficient. So that project was halted with about 10 million historical documents not yet scanned, and the content of the scanned documents not yet systematically classified. Then in 2010, UNRWA launched the web-based refugee registration information system. And again, due to funding shortages, digital records were not created in this system for those refugees who had died before 2010. So information about them can, to this day, only be found in the hard copy historical documents. Now, since last year, we have been able to raise some funding to pilot this new project. And we are committed to continue our efforts and eventually establish a digital archive containing all documents and family trees of registered Palestine refugees. However, as of today, we still do not have the required resources to scale up the project and complete it within an acceptable time frame. All UNRWA activities, actually, including this project, are funded almost entirely by voluntary contributions. So our main challenge right now is to raise the funding we need to be able to expand the current team and invest in intelligent document processing solutions, such as machine learning, optical character recognitions, and natural language technologies. Such investment would allow us to semi-automate the process of extracting document content and retracing family trees, while maintaining, of course, human-in-the-loop validation. We also need resources to develop the digital archive infrastructure and interface, adopting best practices and standards with regard to data protection, security, and privacy. If the required resources are raised, we estimate it will take about 2 years to complete the digitization of all historical documents, and about 6 years to retrace family trees for all registered refugees.
Thank you for that, very comprehensive understanding of what's needed. There are some real challenges, it sounds like, in terms of resources. And so to go back to our friend Khalid's question about when and how a Palestinian refugee can access their family tree and digital record, an excellent question. It sounds like if all the funding were there, the whole project could be complete in a couple of years, but there's a serious lack of resources right now. That means that, the work can't unfold that that efficiently, that quickly. My understanding though, Valeria, if there were those interested in funding aspects of this project, that there may be a way for that individual to access the records, but it's kind of as part of a contribution to the project. Is that right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, for sure. So we welcome, of course, contribution from private donors to work, for example, on specific villages or specific towns and cities in historic Palestine and retrace all family trees of refugees originating from this specific location. So we have received already some funding from private donors that were interested in retracing their own family trees and the family trees of all refugees originating from their specific village. So we welcome, of course, this type of contribution and support.
Okay, great. And then, you know, when I got to meet with all of you in person, you know, I know you all have been thinking about this, but one of the ways in which these archives could be used is obviously in an academic or university setting where research could be done on this period, on the Nakba, and you know, where villagers came from, what happened during the expulsion and displacement. And so we believe that these resources will have rich information for obviously for individuals, for families, and also for the research, the academic and research world. On that note, do you have, in terms of the kind of oversight of the digitization project or engagement, have you been engaging research institutions or universities in this project to date?
We are right now in the process of establishing an academic board of researchers, renowned Palestinian, Arab, and international academics to support us in the inventorying and using, as you said, the rich evidence from these files to produce research and better understand the Nakba and subsequent events that have affected Palestine refugee history.
Great. And so if there are universities for in particular in the US who are interested in knowing more about this information, you should feel free to contact, you can contact any of the individuals here. I'll share Valeria's information at the end of the session. You can contact me directly at Mara, M-A-R-A, at UNRWA USA.org, and we can put you in touch with our colleagues in the field. And if there are individuals out there who are interested in funding, as Valeria said, the documentation, the digitization of records of a whole village, that is something that UNRWA would greatly benefit this project. So please feel free to get in touch with us. And I was, when you saw me go off camera, I was trying to find, I have some of the actual copies of the records you shared. I think Sara shared with me when I was there. And I was going to kind of put one up on the screen because that just makes it feel so much more real. Do you happen to have in front of you, I'm maybe catching you off guard, but any of the documentation? I had it next to me, but I can't find it right now. Do any of you have any pieces of it? No, probably not.
I don't have it next to me.
Okay. We'll see if I can pull that away when before we end the call and just share with you. And so let me turn back to Alaa and Sara. What has been the most fulfilling or rewarding component of this work for both of you? Let's start with Sara this time.
Yeah, for the question, but I would also like to add one of the things that you were discussing back on the challenges that we're currently facing, as I think we're also facing like a problem in reaching out to all Palestine refugees and spreading the needed awareness about the importance of the project. Not only to Palestinians living in UNRWA's fields of operation, but also to the Palestinian diaspora. So through this interview now, you're actually helping us as well reach our community in the US. So I would like to thank you. As for, can you please just let me know what you were asking again, the second question.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the most rewarding aspects of the project for you.
Yeah, personally, when I started working on the project, I actually utilized my skills in order to enhance my work performance, which was noticed by my current supervisor, who called me like a few months after I started work, and he told me that he wants to promote me to a quality assurance specialist. And this was one of the most rewarding moments in the project because I felt that he saw potential in me and that he recognized my work efforts and my dedication. Um, I should also say that this was a changing point in my career as I discovered a new passion, and which I personally believe that will help me reach higher places. And this left me feeling very empowered. Another aspect that I would like to mention here is the role of the management in making our experience very rewarding here as a team. Because honestly, I should say they are very supportive and they really motivate us to be better versions of ourselves. Like for some of my colleagues, they were actually inspired enough to even learn new courses and acquire new skills. Um, and if they were here today, Mara, they would have definitely told you about the challenges that we face in getting a job here in Lebanon due to the restrictions on Palestine refugees on in this Lebanese job market. So for many of my colleagues, they are fresh graduates, and for others, they graduated a few years ago and had no or little chance even in getting a meaningful occupation, despite possessing highly academic qualifications. So, for many of my colleagues, the role here in the project is their first job, actually, like the place they were able to get a chance to prove themselves and to kickstart their career, which is something that we all find very rewarding as well.
Wow, wow! Thank you for sharing, Sara. As I was listening to you, I just found some of the records. So let me try to share. This was something that Sara and Valeria.
This is my colleague Ahmad. I think this is a document related to his family. Yes.
And this was from 1954, I believe. This, and then I think, if I'm correct, these are original from 48. These cards, is that right?
This is the card of my aunt Mariam.
Oh my gosh! Yes, Sara had shared this with me, just to give you an idea of the kind of documents that are being digitized. So, Sara, thank you so much for sharing those documents, those personal documents, and your colleague as well, because I've been able to share them with folks here, and they've been profoundly moved to see those. When you see it in person, it really touches you. So thank you. And let me finally turn to Alaa before we wrap up this fascinating segment. So Alaa, tell me about the most rewarding aspects of this work for you.
Well, I'll answer in two folds. First, this can be a challenge and can be a rewarding aspect, as someone mentioned in the comments. Our project is embarking on some traumas that were repressed and some traumas that were repressed to cope with the pain. Even my own father always finds it hard to talk about these topics, but through going through documents and initiating this dialogue that I was talking about prior to this question, I hope that we are providing a safe space for our community to start the process of healing. For this is like repressed memories are rarely talked about if not triggered. So I hope this project is an opportunity for our community to start talking about these repressed memories and start healing. Another rewarding part of my role is the fact that I'm fortunate to be the person who initiates the process. I'm fortunate to be the person who starts retracing the family tree. Once I start I received the documents, the scanned documents, I start retracing the family tree, and this feels like an honor to be a part of this process. Every case that I work on feels like a small but a significant effort to like in the whole process of preserving the family's history.
Thank you for sharing, Alaa. Thank you so much. Thank you, Valeria, Sara, again, Alaa, for speaking with us on Nakba Day. This was fascinating. I know, as we're seeing from the comments, I know it for me to hear it again is just learning more and more. So it's been such an honor to hear all of you. Thank you for educating us on the important work that UNRWA is doing to preserve refugee stories through this digitization project. On behalf of our whole UNRWA USA team, we really appreciate the time you've taken to share with our listeners and talk about how they can better support UNRWA's program work in the region, particularly this digitization project. Please do feel free to get in touch with us if you want more information. Of course, if you know someone who might be interested, or institutions who might be interested in helping support the funding of this project so it can continue, and you can be in touch with us directly at info@unrwausa.org, or at my email address, mara@unrwausa.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Already, Valeria, I have a couple of requests for information sheets, so we'll make sure we have the latest from you that we can send to folks with additional contact information. So again, thanks to our whole community, and we extend our gratitude and solidarity for all the staff on the ground at UNRWA, particularly right now in Beirut. On this note, I'd like to remind all those watching to keep your eye on Palestine and its refugees, and continue to show your solidarity with Palestine refugees by supporting organizations like our organization, UNRWA USA. And to all those tuning in from DC, I know there are some of you here. We are hosting our Gaza 5K in DC. We're back in the nation's capital after a couple of years of COVID. And this event, of course, goes to support the mental health services for Palestine refugees, especially children in Gaza. This event is on Saturday, May 20th. We know with the recent bombing in Gaza that the residents there, Palestine refugees there, need our support more than ever. So we do encourage you to join at gaza5k.org. You can register there, and you can also contribute there. And you can also support UNRWA USA by making a one-time donation, or becoming, even better, a monthly solidarity sustainer. And also, you will see on our website many opportunities to advocate for the continuation of UNRWA's work by contacting members of Congress. Please visit unrwausa.org to learn more. That is UNRWUSA.org to learn more. And you can, of course, also, if you're so moved, you can donate at unrwausa.org. And thanks to all those many members of our community who have provided so much support and advocacy for us. And finally, this is a reminder to follow us on social media at UNRWA USA to stay up to date with our latest and hear really informative sessions like you heard today. So again, thank you so much, Valeria, Sara, and Alaa, and thank you to all those who tuned in. Alf shukr, and we hope to see DC folks at the Gaza 5K in Rock Creek Park on May 20th. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Mara, for hosting us today, and thanks our viewers.
Great.
Thank you, Mara, and thank you for everyone who's watching us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'd also like to tell you that you gave us a platform to talk about the project today, so thank you.
Thank you so much.